Have you ever had that feeling that even when surrounded by people, you seem to be alone? That the challenges you face are too great and that no one really understands what's going on inside your heart? Well, yes. What if I told you that this video didn't appear on your screen by chance? That at this very moment, God is trying to speak to you, yes, to you, the very person reading this right now. The truth is that at some point in our lives, we all experience uncertainty, that silence that seems deafening. The good news is that this silence can be the perfect space where God chooses to whisper the most incredible plans He has for your life. And do you know what's most impressive? Often, it's precisely when you feel most lost that He is closest to revealing a path to you that you never imagined existed. This video is a call. It's not to give you magic formulas or empty catchphrases, but to remind you of a powerful truth. God continues to act, even when you don't realize it. And today, He wants to show you that there is a purpose behind every tear, every weight, every battle. Nothing happens by chance. So stay with me until the end, because what we're going to talk about here could be the turning point in your journey. And look, this isn't just about hearing a nice message. It's about ignite within you real faith, unshakable confidence, and a true desire for transformation. Before continuing, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and share this video with someone who also needs a divine answer. You can be the instrument that God uses to touch another life. Now here's the challenge. Write the phrase in the comments. God is speaking to me and I am ready to listen. Write as an act of faith, as a step of courage, as a cry from the soul saying, I do not give up, I believe. Just imagine you are walking through life, stumbling over uncertainties, dealing with doubts that seem to have no end, and suddenly someone looks you in the eye and says, you were chosen by God. Not as if repeating a beautiful phrase, but as if seeing something deep, invisible to the eyes, but pulsating within the soul. This choice does not depend on merit, nor on spiritual curriculum, nor on perfection. It comes from grace. It is as if the Creator of the universe had pointed to you in the midst of a crowd and said, this is the one I want to do something extraordinary with. Being chosen by God does not mean having a life without problems. On the contrary, sometimes it means facing tougher trials precisely because there is a greater purpose at stake. Think of biblical characters like Joseph, who was sold by his own brothers, unjustly imprisoned, but ended up becoming governor of Egypt. Nothing he experienced was easy, but everything had a reason. Just like you. Maybe you still don't understand why there are so many falls, new beginnings, and closed doors. But there is a reason, and it is not punishment, it is preparation. We often associate being chosen with something great in the eyes of the world: fame, success, recognition. But God's view is different. He chooses the unlikely, the forgotten, the broken, the tired. He doesn't look for impeccable resumes, but for available hearts. Therefore, it doesn't matter if you've made mistakes, if you failed, or if you feel like a disaster today. That doesn't change the fact that you were called by name. And God doesn't make mistakes in His choices. When you recognize yourself as someone chosen, your attitude towards life changes. You begin to understand that even cloudy days carry seeds of the future, that the pains that made you stop yesterday are the same ones that will drive you forward tomorrow, that you don't need to be in control of everything to continue confidently, because when God chooses you, He also empowers you, He sustains you, He opens a path where there is no road. The question is, can you see yourself that way? As someone who was chosen not to live any old way, but to carry out a mission that only you can fulfill. Being chosen does not make you better than others, but it does make you responsible for what you have received. It is like receiving a sealed letter from heaven with personal instructions. It is up to you to decide whether you will open it, read it, and follow it. God's choice over your life is not a theory, it is a daily call. It is when you feel that restlessness in your chest that does not go away, that desire for something more, that certainty that there is something beyond. This is God calling you back to Him, and it all begins when you stop running away and truly accept this choice. Not with fear, but with faith, because He does not choose by mistake, He chooses out of love. And when God's love chooses you, even your mistakes can become part of your mission. So before I move on to the next point, I leave you with this question. What changes in your life when you truly believe that you were chosen? How many times have you looked up at the sky and asked yourself, why is this happening to me? Sometimes with anger, sometimes with pain, sometimes in a heavy silence that seems to have no answer. But what if I told you that everything, absolutely everything, you've experienced from the most beautiful days to the darkest moments has a common thread? That nothing is wasted, that no tear falls without reason, and that even that no that frustrated you so much was part of something bigger that you still can't see. This is what it means to live with purpose. And no, I'm not talking about a fixed destiny like a rigid script. I'm talking about a personal mission, a calling that only you can fulfill. God doesn't put anyone in this world as an extra. Each person is born with something unique to offer. And no matter how big the stage is, it could be at home, at work, in the silence of prayer, or in the courage to start over. If it's to fulfill a purpose, everything gains eternal value. You know that relationship that ended, that door that closed, that difficult phase that seemed to have no end. Well, it may seem crazy, but even that makes sense. God is an expert in transforming chaos into a path. We only realize later, when we look back and see that if certain things hadn't happened, we wouldn't be where we are, we wouldn't have learned what we learned, and we wouldn't have the strength to dream what we dream today. And living with purpose is not about waiting for a big, divine sign with thunder and heavenly voices. It's about paying attention to the little nudges in life. Sometimes purpose begins with discomfort, with dissatisfaction that takes you out of your comfort zone. Other times it begins with a skill you have that can bless lives, or even a dream that won't leave your head. All of these are clues that you are being led. Now, if there is one truth that needs to be made clear, it is this. Living with purpose is not about living without pain. It is about knowing that pain has a direction. When life seems unfair, when you think you are being left behind, remember that God does not work with waste. Every detail of your journey can be used as a tool for growth. It is like a tapestry. From the back, it looks all messy, but when you turn it over, you see the perfect design. And this design is the story that God is writing with your life. If you feel like you haven't discovered your purpose yet, don't be too hard on yourself. Sometimes it's hidden in the simplest things, in caring for someone, in a comforting word, in a courageous choice. Start by asking yourself, what really moves me? Or, what would I do even if I didn't receive applause? Often your purpose is closer than you think. It's just waiting for you to accept it. And if doubt strikes, remember, you are not alone in this search. God is by your side all the time, guiding you, opening paths, and, most importantly, shaping your heart so that you are ready to live what He has planned. Because it is not about speed, it is about being at the right pace of faith. And those who walk with purpose will not get lost, even if they walk on difficult paths. Now tell me, are you willing to see your story through the eyes of heaven? There are days that seem the same routines, same problems, same tired thoughts that go around in your head as if they never end. And it is precisely on these days that something powerful can happen if you decide to look at things differently. Because true transformation does not begin with a major external change. It begins with an enough said from within. A silent but firm choice. And maybe today is exactly that day for you. Yes, today. Not tomorrow, not after everything gets better. Not when you're stronger or less afraid. Today, the change you've been seeking can begin right now, just the way you are. Because God doesn't wait for us to be ready. He waits for us to be willing. And when faith meets this willingness, something supernatural begins to happen. Transformation is not magic. It is a decision. It is when you look at yourself and understand that you can no longer live pushing the days forward, that your soul is crying out for help, that there is a greater purpose waiting for you, but it requires courage. Courage to let go of what holds you back. Courage to let God guide you. Courage to be vulnerable and say, Lord, I need you more than anything else. Sometimes this transformation begins with a small gesture. Forgiving someone, forgiving yourself, asking for help, breaking away from a toxic cycle, starting over without guarantees. Other times, it begins with a desperate cry in tears in the bedroom. It doesn't matter what the format is. What matters is the heart that decides to change, that surrenders, that trusts, and trust because faith is the fuel for transformation, even when nothing around you shows signs of change. Faith keeps you firm. Faith makes you take steps in the dark, believing that God has already prepared the ground. It does not eliminate challenges, but it gives you the strength to overcome them. And more than that, it transforms you as you walk, because transformation is not just about changing your life. It's about changing on the inside, so that your life can also change on the outside. Have you ever stopped to think about how many opportunities for change you have postponed out of fear, or because you thought it was not the right time? Maybe today is the day you need to say enough to the old version of yourself, the one that survives but does not live. The one that distrusts everything, including God's promises. The one that hides behind excuses, wounds, and old frustrations. God did not call you to this. He called you to live freely, to live with meaning, to live with faith. And do you know what the good news is? God is an expert at starting new stories on ordinary days. Maybe the today you have been despising so much is the one heaven has reserved to lift you up. Don't wait for everything to be aligned before you take the first step. Take the step and trust that God will align whatever is necessary. Because when He starts a work, He Himself takes care of finishing it. All He needs is a yes. So think, if today were the first day of the rest of your life, what would you do differently? When we talk about prosperity, most people immediately think of money, possessions, and material achievements. There is nothing wrong with wanting a comfortable life, but there is something much deeper that, when ignored, turns all wealth into emptiness. The soul does not feed on numbers. And that is why true prosperity begins within, where the eyes cannot reach, but where God dwells. Have you ever seen someone who has everything but lives with a hole in their chest? Someone who accumulates public victories and silent defeats? Prosperity is not driving an expensive car with a broken heart. It is not posting smiles while hiding from your own truth. What good is a luxurious house if anguish lives inside it? What good is status if there is no peace to lay your head at night? God has something better for you. He offers something the world cannot buy: peace, wisdom, love, and purpose. These are the riches that truly sustain us on bad days. The peace that surpasses all understanding is the peace that remains even when everything seems to be falling apart. It is the calm of the soul that knows that God is in control. Wisdom, in turn, is the spiritual GPS that prevents you from making disastrous decisions, that shows you when to wait and when to act. Love, true love, is the kind that heals wounds that no one sees, that gives you the ability to forgive, to give of yourself, to see others with mercy. And purpose. Oh, purpose is what gives meaning to your journey. It is what lifts you up when you think of giving up. These riches do not appear on bank statements, but they do appear in the glow of those who have found meaning again. They do not guarantee an easy life, but they do guarantee a life worth living. Those who are spiritually prosperous know how to be content with what they have, know how to wait for the right time, and know how to recognize God's hand even in small victories. These people may not have everything they want, but they have the essential, communion with the Creator. Now, this does not mean that God is against material prosperity. Quite the opposite. He is a father, and what father does not want to see his children well off? But what he does not want is for the pursuit of having to suffocate the being, for blessings to distance you from the blesser. Material prosperity is a consequence, not the goal, and when the heart is filled with the right things, it naturally attracts what is good. Want a practical example? Instead of spending hours worrying about what you lack, how about investing 15 minutes of your day in prayer and Bible reading? Try starting with Proverbs or Psalms. These are books full of practical wisdom for everyday life. Instead of seeking approval on social media, how about seeking approval in your time with God? That is where the soul is strengthened and the spirit prospers. True prosperity cannot be measured with a human ruler. It is subtle but powerful. And the more you delve into it, the more you realize that everything you thought was essential was, in fact, superficial. God does want to enrich you, but first, on the inside, because when the soul is prosperous, the rest falls into place. And then, even material prosperity arrives in a healthy way, without robbing you of your essence. So tell me honestly, what have you been seeking more? What pleases the eyes or what strengthens the soul? Have you ever tried to assemble a piece of furniture without reading the manual? Or planted a seed in dry soil and waited for it to bloom? Well, without preparation, even the best promise can be lost, and it's no different with God's blessings. He wants to fill you with life, purpose, and transformation. But before pouring all of that out, He wants to prepare the ground, and that ground is your heart. There are people who ask for a shower of blessings, but they walk around with an open umbrella of pride. They want victory, but they are not willing to face the process. It is hard to say, but the truth is that not all prayers are answered right away because we are still unprepared to carry the weight of what we are asking for. God does not deny the blessing. He protects you from the blessing before it is time. Spiritual preparation begins with something very simple and yet very profound. Recognizing that you can't do it alone. It's when you admit with sincerity that you need divine help, that you need faith, guidance, and inner transformation. And this requires a humble attitude of someone who doesn't have all the answers, but is willing to listen, learn, and change. One of the first steps in this preparation is forgiveness. Carrying around resentment is like trying to run a marathon with a backpack full of rocks. You can keep going, but each step will be harder. Forgiving isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about deciding that it won't hold you back anymore. And look, sometimes the person you need to forgive the most is yourself. Another key point is true prayer. I'm not talking about empty repetitions here, but about real conversations with God. In your own way, with your own words, in whatever way comes. Speak as if you were talking to a father, a friend, someone who knows you completely. It is in this space of sincerity that the Holy Spirit acts, consoles, and guides. And do you know what's most beautiful? You don't need to know how to pray beautifully. You just need to speak from the heart. And of course, we can't forget the word. Reading the Bible is not a ritual. It is a source of nourishment. It is where you find direction, wisdom, and strength. If you don't have the habit yet, start small. Take a verse a day, write it down and reflect on it. Try starting with Matthew chapter 6. It has some precious gems about prayer, faith and priorities. Preparation also involves practical actions, moving away from environments that drain you spiritually, taking care of your emotional health, establishing devotional routines. And this is not religiosity. It is intentionality. It is knowing that to reap something new, you need to plant something different. It is making yourself available for God to act, even if your ego screams, even if fear tries to dominate. Now think with me. If today God poured out everything you have asked for, would you be ready to hold on to it, or would you end up wasting it because you don't have the necessary emotional and spiritual foundation? Sometimes waiting is not punishment, it is construction. And God, as a good father, builds with firmness, not in haste. So what can you do today to better prepare this soil? Because one thing is certain, what God has for your life is too big to fall on shallow ground. There are days when we wake up wanting to disappear, right? It seems like everything is going wrong at the same time. Bills are due, bad news is coming, prayers seem to never get through. At these times, our hearts are heavy, our minds are confused, and the question almost automatically arises, has God forgotten about me? If you have ever felt this way, know that you are not alone, but also know that it is exactly in these types of moments that faith shows its true strength. Having faith when everything is going well is easy. It's almost natural to be thankful when doors open, when dreams come true, when everything is in place. But the faith that transforms lives is the kind that remains firm when the ground shakes. It's the kind that remains even when you don't understand why things are the way they are. It's like walking in the dark, with your eyes closed but your heart open, trusting that God is guiding your steps, even when you can't see a hand in front of you. This faith is not born overnight. It is built, brick by brick, day after day, battle after battle. And the good news is that every time you choose to keep believing, even without visible reasons, this faith grows stronger. It's like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets. And do you know what happens? This faith begins to truly sustain you. When everything says it's over, it whispers it will pass. When fear screams, it says trust. When the mind loses its way, it points to the sky. Of course, there will be doubts. Of course, there will be times when you want to give up, but strong faith doesn't ignore hardships. It faces them, not because you are strong in yourself, but because you know who is with you on the journey. God never promised no storms, but He did promise His constant presence, and it is this presence that renews strength in the midst of chaos. Want some practical advice? Nourish your faith every day. Don't wait for a crisis to come before seeking God. Nourish yourself with the Word as if you needed it to breathe. Reflect on biblical stories of unshakable faith, like David, who faced a giant with a stone, and an absurd amount of trust, or Paul, who praised God even when he was in prison, or Job, who declared in the midst of pain that he would continue to hope in God. These examples are not fairy tales. They are living reminders that it is possible to continue believing even on the worst days. Another thing, talk to people who have faith. You know that person who, even when going through struggles, shines with hope. Get close to them. Faith is contagious. And be careful who you listen to. There are a lot of people spreading discouragement out there. If it doesn't edify you, don't listen. Because in these difficult times, everything you feed in your mind and heart makes a difference. You may be crossing a desert right now, but a desert is not a place to live. It's a passage, and those who cross it with faith don't come out the same on the other side. They come out stronger, more confident, closer to God. And when you look back, you'll realize faith didn't stop the struggles, but it gave you the structure to overcome them. So take a deep breath and ask yourself, in the midst of this difficulty, what does faith want to teach me? Have you ever noticed that sometimes the closer we get to achieving something, the more things seem to spiral out of control? It's as if, at the exact moment we decide not to give up, new obstacles appear, old doubts appear, and that feeling that everything is falling apart. But what if I told you that this apparent chaos can be one of the clearest signs that blessings are coming? God has a very special way of working. He doesn't follow human logic, and he often surprises us at the most unlikely times. Sometimes the pain increases because healing is near. The battle heats up because victory is just around the corner. And this isn't just fancy talk, it's spiritual reality. The enemy doesn't mind people standing still, but when you start moving in the right direction, he tries to destabilize you, because he knows that when you connect with God's purpose, nothing can stop you. It is common to think that signs of blessing will come wrapped in calm, absolute peace, and clear certainties. But many times, they come in the form of tests. They come disguised as frustrations, closed doors, and delays. But these delays are not denials, they are alignments. And God uses precisely these moments to see if we are ready, if we trust, even when we do not see, if we persist, even when we do not feel. You know those days when you're too tired to pray, but you still get on your knees? Or when everything inside you wants to give up, but you choose to keep going? These small acts of faith are like silent cries to heaven saying, I trust. And that's when heaven answers. Because God honors the silent effort, the broken heart, the timid but faith-filled step. Another clear sign that a blessing is near is the inexplicable peace in the midst of a storm. Not a peace that comes from circumstances, but one that dwells within and sustains even when everything around is in chaos. This peace is a sign that God is working behind the scenes. It is Him whispering, I am here. Even if you don't see it, I am aligning everything for the right moment. It is also common to feel a holy discomfort shortly before the blessing. That restlessness that takes us out of our comfort zone. It could be a change of environment, a friendship that falls apart, a job that ends, things that seem like losses but are preparations. God cuts away what impedes progress. He shakes up what is stagnant. Because a blessing that comes into life unprepared becomes a burden. A striking biblical example of this is Elijah on Mount Carmel. Before the fire fell, there was silence. And before the rain fell, there was resistance. But he remained. Even when the sky seemed closed, he told his servant to look again, and on the seventh time, a cloud the size of a man's hand appeared. Small? Yes. But it was the sign. Don't despise small signs. They are the first steps to the miracle. So if you feel like everything is getting harder, more confusing, heavier, stop, breathe, and ask yourself, am I closer than I think? Because sometimes the sign of blessing is not the calm. It's the struggle that comes before the peace. It's the crying that precedes the laughter. It's the silence that prepares God's voice to echo in an unforgettable way. What about you? Have you recognized any of these signs on your journey? We love to be in control, don't we? To know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how it's all going to work out. The problem is that this need to control everything robs us of exactly what God wants to give us most: freedom, peace, and miracles. Because the miracle doesn't happen when you finally understand the plan. It happens when you let go of the plan. When you decide, even though you're shaking inside, to hand everything over to God. Total surrender is not easy. We try to hide it. But the truth is that many people live with a reserve faith. They trust God to a certain extent, but they still have backup plans, their own paths, secret escapes. But true faith does not have a backup plan. It is trusting that God will do it, even without having any idea how. It is throwing yourself into it with your eyes closed, believing that He has His hands outstretched. It is walking on water, even without knowing how to swim. And it is precisely in this total surrender that miracles begin to unfold. Not because God needs it to act, but because we need it to allow Him to act. The control we hold on to so much is often what delays our blessing. The anxiety of solving everything on our own stifles divine action. God does not force us to surrender. He waits for our yes. And when that yes comes from a broken, willing, sincere heart, oh, heaven moves, but be careful. Surrendering is not giving up. Surrendering is trusting. It is saying, God, I don't have the strength, but I keep believing. It is stopping trying to force doors and starting to wait for the one He will open. It is accepting that perhaps His plan is better, even if, for now, it seems more difficult. Remember Abraham? God asked him to do something unthinkable, to surrender his own son. And it was in that extreme moment of surrender that the miracle appeared. Because true faith, when put to the test, becomes the stage for the supernatural. Want a practical example? Take everything you've been trying to control with your own hands, that impossible situation, that nagging worry, that dream that's become a burden. Take all of that and literally write it down on a piece of paper. Then talk to God about each item. Say out loud, Lord, I surrender. Burn the paper if you want. But do this act sincerely. Make surrender a visible gesture. And repeat it as many times as necessary, because surrender is not an event, it's a daily process. Another important point, when you surrender, don't try to spy on what God is doing. Trust is letting Him write the story without having to correct the script. And remember, the miracle may not happen the way you imagined. It may come in the form of comfort, inner healing, unexpected doors. The essential thing is to have a free heart to recognize it was God. And sometimes the greatest miracle of surrender is what happens inside you. It's when you discover that you can live without the burden of control, that you can rest, that you can trust a God who sees the whole while you only see a part, a God who knows the end from the beginning, and who never ever loses control, even when everything seems out of whack. So what's stopping you from letting go of that weight? What do you need to let go of today, once and for all? We live in a world that values what we see: numbers, achievements, followers, bank balance. Society measures success by the size of the house, the car in the garage, the trips posted on Instagram. And the risk is real, believing that if we have these things, we are automatically well. But what about the soul? How is your interior? Because the truth, and it hurts, is that there are many people who are rich on the outside and miserable on the inside. There is nothing wrong with desiring comfort and material prosperity. God has no problem with wealth. The problem is when wealth becomes an idol, when material goods take the place that should be given to faith, gratitude, and purpose. When having suffocates being, and therein lies the danger, conquering the world and losing yourself. God does want to bless you financially, and He wants to see you prosper in all areas. But before that, He wants your heart to be aligned. He wants you to understand that everything material is temporary, that what truly sustains a life cannot be bought: peace, wisdom, love, faith, trust. These are the true treasures of heaven. Have you ever seen someone who has little but lives with joy, with light in their eyes, with words that warm the soul? Have you ever seen someone who, even without status, is a firm rock in the storms? This is the portrait of balance, a person who has learned to put the spiritual first and therefore manages material things wisely. They are not controlled by money, but know how to use it to serve, to sow, to grow. Want a practical example of how to find this balance? Start with your priorities. Look at your routine. How much time of your day do you dedicate to things that strengthen your spirit? Do you start the day running after results or talking to God? Establish moments of silence, reflection, and Bible reading. Choose books that edify you, like The Richest Man Who Ever Lived by Stephen K. Scott, which combines spiritual wisdom and practical principles. And when God begins to bless you, because He will, if you remain faithful, remember where it all began. Honor what you have been given. Use your resources to impact lives, to help those in need, to invest in personal and collective growth. Material things pass away, but what you do with them leaves an everlasting mark. The key to balance lies in the order of things. When the spiritual comes first, the material falls into place. But when this order is reversed, the soul goes into crisis. It is not about living a minimalist life and denying what is good, but about not allowing the external to define your value. Because your identity is not in what you have, but in who called you. You are a child of a Father who owns everything. He knows how to take care of you, but before He fills your hands, He wants to fill your heart. Because a heart filled with God knows how to handle anything, including prosperity. Now think, if God gives you everything you asked for, what will remain when the applause stops? After all this, stop for a moment and reflect. What is God trying to show you these days? Isn't it time to get off autopilot and start living with more awareness, with more faith, with more intentionality? Because if there is one thing that has become clear in every word spoken so far, it is that God is acting, even if you don't realize it, even if you are tired, even if you think you no longer have the strength. He didn't call you to survive. He called you to live with purpose, with confidence, with fulfillment. The question now is, what are you going to do with all this? Are you going to let this content pass by like just another inspirational video that you watched and forgot about? Or are you going to make a real decision to transform yourself? Are you going to keep trying to control everything on your own? Or are you going to finally hand over to God what you know is too much? Review your steps, observe the signs, silence the distractions, and listen. God is speaking. Change begins where pride ends and surrender is born. Don't wait for life to knock you down to discover how much you need faith. Don't wait for a blessing to start trusting. Start today, exactly as you are, because God doesn't choose the prepared, He prepares the chosen. Now I want to know from you, what touched your heart the most? What part made you think differently? And what are you going to change from now on? If this video spoke to you in any way, like it, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. Here, you will find more content to strengthen you, inspire you, and remind you that it is never too late to start over. God still writes extraordinary stories with stained pages. The next one could be yours.